If I could have everybody just get seated, we'll get started for the evening. We got a few stragglers coming in. All right, good evening. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Natalie Edmiston. I am the Vice Chair of the Gray Republican Committee. And we are honored to be able to host this event with the local committees around us and everyone else who's a friend of the Republican Party. Thank you for coming out. I hope that everyone's will enjoy tonight and really get fired up about these issues. We're excited to bring some attention to things that are going on in politics today. Our first speaker tonight, his name is Peter Brown. He is our chair, and he's been part of the committee for about over a year now, and we have been really excited because he's brought energy and new ideas to our group and he's helped getting us organized. So after being born and raised in Maine, Peter left for the West Coast, and he raised his family in Virginia, where him and his wife raised their 4 kids. He returned to Maine several years ago and is thrilled to once again sit on the rocky seacoast and admire the ocean here. He is an author. He wrote 2 books. He's the author of the book for teenagers called The True Love Thing to Do, an interactive workbook on finding love and preparing for an enduring marriage, and is working on one new book called The Living Compass of Kindness and Compassionate Love, essays, poems, and stories about a world of love and beauty. He hosts the Love, Freedom, and the World YouTube channel, which is focused on a hybrid of spirituality, freedom, centered cultural and political issues. He writes frequently at his website, Peter Falkenberg Brown, and that's Falkenberg with an E in the middle, just in case you're wondering and you lose his site there. So we are excited to introduce Peter Falkenberg Brown. Everybody, warm welcome for Peter. Thank you.
Well, Jack, a military veteran, has suggested correctly that we should do the Pledge of Allegiance, so why don't we stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you all for coming. What a lovely evening. Thank you, Natalie, for introducing me. Well, I first want to just say thank you to a number of people, the Cumberland Town Committee, the Chairman Bob Vail and Meredith Strang-Burgess and Peter Bingham were so gracious as to co-host this event with the town of Gray, the Gray Republican Committee. Without them, we wouldn't be here, so I'm very thankful for them. Yeah. I also want to thank 22 other Republican committees, town Republican committees of Cumberland County that co-sponsored this event. And if you've seen the flyer, you've seen their list. And we could not have done this event without every single one of those towns and the 9 nonprofit organizations, including the Cumberland County Republican Committee, and also our very own Representative Sue Austin from Gray. So, yay. We also have Representative Heidi Sampson here, who with her team will be asking you to sign some people's referendums. I'm going to have her explain that before the final question and answer session starts, so that you'll know what's there, and then you can do that at the end of the speeches. Also, I want to thank the town of Cumberland, Pete Bingham Jr. and Chief Charles Rumsey, Lieutenant Dave Young, and their team for just really making this work for us. I really appreciate it. And of course, thanks to Matt Gagnon and Charlie Honkonen for being our speakers, because without them we wouldn't be here either. So this is a wonderful team effort, and I'm very grateful. We'll have 3 speakers between 20 and 30 minutes each. At the end of each talk, we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A directed to that speaker. At the end of the 3rd speaker, we'll have a Q&A session that's longer, that you can ask questions of any one of the 3 speakers, and they'll come up to the podium and answer the question. If your cell phone hasn't been put on silent, please do, like the movie theaters. And during the Q&A, we'll have the email sign-up sheets go through the chairs. If you haven't signed our email list, we're going to be informing people who sign up of news from Gray, but because there are towns that are co-sponsoring, if you put down your city, then we can give your name to the town committee for that city as well, and you can get news from them too. And let's see, we have a donation bucket in the back. You can put $100 bills in there to your heart's content. At the Blueberry Festival, someone put a $100 bill in the bucket right in front of me, and I almost had a heart attack. Whoa! So we like $100 bills. And we also have raffle prizes here that are just tremendous, donated by all kinds of folks, including Representative Austin. And so we have a raffle thing at the back. During the Q&A, you can go and buy raffle tickets and sign those things, as long as you're quiet, because we will have Q&A during that time. And let's see. We also have town committee monthly meetings. In Gray, the meetings are on the 4th Wednesday of each month at the Gray Public Library. The next meeting is on September 25th, Wednesday. They're always at 6:30. Our website is grayrepublicans.org, so you can go there for news of that. And also, many of the town committees that are co-sponsoring have their meetings, whether monthly or at different time slots. But we do encourage everyone to go to your meetings there. So, I don't think I forgot anything from that. So it's time for me to give my talk. So, you know, there's a joke in the South. I spent 21 years in Virginia where I learned how to say y'all. And there's a joke with Baptist pastors down there. If they hold up their watch during a talk, they say, "What does it mean when you hold up your watch?" And if you're a Baptist pastor, and the answer is absolutely nothing. They'll talk forever. But I'm not going to talk forever. I do have some notes, which I will be referring to. And it may look like they're thick, but they're not thick. It just has a big typeface, so I can take my glasses off. Because I'm 65 almost, so you need glasses. So, I'm going to start my talk with some controversial, politically incorrect words. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a fine group of men and women are gathered here tonight. You are all stellar examples of masculinity and femininity, and are wonderful representatives of the human race. And for those words, I would be censored and censured in some venues, because those are politically correct taboos. Have any of you been censored online or anywhere? I know I have. Recently, I sent out a tweet on Twitter, and it stated, "You can bet 100% that if the Christians in Nigeria were slaughtering the Islamic Fulanis, the American leftist celebs would be all over it. Evil Christians. But no, it's the Islamists killing the Christians, so celebs just simply yawn. They must hate Christians a lot to be so cold." And for that, I violated Twitter's hateful conduct policy and was locked out of my account until I reluctantly removed that post so I could do more tweets. By the way, when I say leftist, I do not mean liberal. Liberals are mostly good-hearted Americans who love freedom for all. Leftists do not love freedom for all. So next question. Do any of you self-censor among your family, your friends, or at your work where you want to give an opinion about conservative politics, but you don't? Anybody? A lot. I do too. Well, in Germany, only 18% of the survey respondents stated that they agreed with the statement that it was possible to express oneself fully in public. Only 18%. So therefore, what is the status of freedom in 2019? Well, today we have colleges, institutions, town governments banning common sense words like ladies and gentlemen, he, him, his, and she, her, hers, American, America, illegal immigrant, male, female, Mr., Mrs., Ms., husband, wife, mailman, policeman, and man-made. Non-binary preferred pronouns are becoming mandatory in school. And in the city code of Berkeley, California, manholes are becoming maintenance holes. Man-made is becoming human-made. She, her, he, him are becoming they and them. Politically correct speech, in my opinion, is simply newspeak by another name. In George Orwell's novel 1984, Syme, a specialist in newspeak, meets the protagonist Winston and explains the rise of newspeak. He says, "Don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it. The revolution will be complete when the language is perfect. Has it ever occurred to you, Winston, that by the year 2050, at the very latest, not a single human being will be alive who could understand such a conversation as we are having now?" Well, in 30 years it will be 2050, and I predict that George Orwell's analysis of society may come true, because today, language, thought, speech, and religious beliefs and practices are giving ground, retreating in front of totalitarianism all around the world, and are being heavily eroded here in America, the last best hope for freedom. Many social opinions are becoming verboten. History is being rewritten. Statues of very important people are being torn down. White Christian men, both old and young, are becoming the new villains in the left's efforts to divide and conquer the human race. 8-year-old Ava Martinez, cute as a button, is receiving death threats now because of her mini AOC video parodies of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Have any of you seen them? Yes. She's receiving death threats, and her parents have deleted her social media accounts to protect her from the hateful left. Democratic Congresswoman Frederica Wilson stated, "Those people who are online making fun of members of Congress are a disgrace. We're going to shut them down and work with whoever it is to shut them down, and they should be prosecuted." Poor mini AOC. Reza Aslan, the Islamist supremacist, the former CNN contributor and cannibal who ate human brain tissue in India, recently tweeted, "After today, there is no longer any room for nuance. The president is a white nationalist terror leader. His supporters, all of them, are by definition white nationalist terror supporters. The MAGA hat is a KKK hood." Do we have any MAGA hats here? No. Oh, phew. No, you should. You should all go buy one right now. "And this evil racist scourge," Aslan said, "this evil racist scourge must be eradicated from society." That's what the Nazis said. Twitter has not removed his tweet for violating their hate speech guidelines. Restrictions on free speech are now becoming restrictions on civil rights. Leftists are fully committed to the denial of civil rights to groups of individuals whom they despise. Instead of making colored-only lunch counters, leftists today are removing the lunch counters altogether. Conservatives are being censored and kicked off Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Vimeo, Amazon, WordPress, and other web hosting platforms. They're being rejected, service denied by hotels, banks, credit card companies, payment processors, restaurants, services like Eventbrite, and even Uber and Lyft. The left's attacks on free speech and its attendant civil rights are global, rapid, comprehensive, and powerful. And China is the worst offender, with its social credit score system, which, in the words of Chinese authorities, will, quote, ensure that the bad people in society don't have a place to go, and while good people can move freely and without obstruction. France has convinced Facebook to give it the government in France, Facebook user identification of those those French Facebook users who are possibly committing hate speech. Sonia Cissé of the law firm Linklaters in Paris stated, "It is a strong signal in terms of regulation. Hate speech is no longer considered part of freedom of speech. It is now on the same level as terrorism," in France. Facebook has also started a civil rights task force to, quote, ensure civil rights concerns raised by outside groups are escalated promptly to decision makers so that they can be considered and acted on quickly. Facebook's audit calls for stronger censorship of hate speech and, quote, hateful ideologies. Humor will no longer be a protected category. Don't laugh on Facebook. Facebook has created a dangerous individuals and organizations policy, and they've added conservatives to that list who, although they are controversial, are by no stretch of the imagination dangerous, including Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, Gavin McInnes, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Paul Joseph Watson. On Facebook, the 119 actually dangerous Antifa groups are not listed in the dangerous category. The Antifa group Smash Racism DC posted this on Facebook without any censure. "This is a message to Ted Cruz, Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump, and the rest of the racist, sexist, transphobic, and homophobic right-wing scum. You are not safe. We will find you. We will expose you. We will take from you the peace you've taken from so many others." They were not censored. Facebook has a policy against posting death threats, but specifically allows them for those listed as a dangerous individual. In 2016, Britain arrested almost 4,000 people based on Section 127 of the Communications Act 2003, which makes it illegal to intentionally, quote, cause annoyance, inconvenience, or needless anxiety to another. And they've arrested 4,000 people in that year for that. Police ignored offensive speech that was anti-Semitic or anti-white. Instead, they focused on so-called hate speech online. Instead of doing something useful, for example, stopping the Muslim rape gangs. The British activist Tommy Robinson just recently went to prison for the second time for the same offense. What was his crime? He was doing video commentary outside a courthouse during the trial of a huge Muslim rape gang that had raped girls as young as 11 every night for years. YouTube banned a video of Tommy's message from prison because it violated their hate speech policy. Robert Spencer, the author of The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS, not to be confused with the white supremacist Richard Spencer, recently stated about Tommy's conviction, "Britain has become a shabby little police state in which it is illegal to criticize Islam and mass Muslim migration in Britain today. Its death as a free society is by its own hand." And I just have to think, the poor British people, what would Winston Churchill do? Examples of Britain's tragic transformation into an Orwellian state are everywhere, including the arrest of a young mother named Kate Scottow in front of her children, locked in a cell for 7 hours. Her laptop and cell phone have not been returned after 2 months. Her crime? She called a transgender woman a man on Twitter. Another example in Britain is the British doctor David Macarith, who was fired for refusing to, quote, call any 6-foot-tall, bearded man madam on his manager's whim. Back in America, things are almost as bad. Immigrants are coming to America hoping to find the land of the free, but some of them are not finding it to be the land of the free. If America is not going to be the land of the free, where will anyone go in the world? There's no place left. Ridvan Aydemir, the apostate prophet and ex-Muslim from Turkey, was banned from Twitter because he criticized Islam. In his video, Twitter Bans Criticism of Islam, he stated, "Whenever I see something like this, I lose hope. I lose hope. I lose my love for the Western culture. I lose my love for this culture of freedom that seems to be dying. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised considering that a major Saudi prince is a big shareholder at Twitter, bigger than Jack Dorsey, who is a co-founder of Twitter. Maybe this is the reason why Twitter acts so un-Western, so un-American, so embarrassingly stupid. Project Veritas interviewed a Google insider, Jen Janai, who stated, "We all got screwed over in 2016. Again, it wasn't just us, it was the people got screwed over, the news media got screwed over, like everybody got screwed over. So we're rapidly been like, what happened there, and how do we, i.e. Google, how do we prevent it from happening again?" Research psychologist Robert Epstein recently told Tucker Carlson of Fox News that Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Amazon can, quote, manipulate and flip 15 million votes in the 2020 elections. Previously, he stated, one Google shift in search results on Election Day in 2018 shifted from 800,000 to 4.6 million votes to Democratic candidates. That's serious stuff for our work. So, what is the status of freedom in 2019? I would describe it as a DEFCON 1 emergency, with DEFCON 1, of course, being the worst. In the Patriot Post, Arnold Allert stated, only a radical movement sensing its moment is finally at hand would be that forthcoming. Hence, 2020 is the critical mass election. Either those wholly contemptuous of this nation and its founding principles get thoroughly repudiated, or the last best hope for mankind can hang out a going out of business sign on the Capitol dome. Totalitarianism has many casualties. Most heartbreaking are perhaps the victims of the left's long march to the institutions, our young people. Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla are creating a documentary film called No Safe Spaces. The film's promotional text states, today's campus snowflake is tomorrow's teacher, judge, or elected official. And if that doesn't scare you, maybe you should reconsider. No matter where you live or what you do, if you don't think the way they do, they will attempt to silence and punish you. In my opinion, the most pernicious agents of tyranny today are Marxism, socialism, and Islam. And lest I be misunderstood, I do not mean that all Muslims are agents of tyranny. The problems with Islam are its orthodox, jihadist attitudes toward non-Muslims in its doctrine and ideology, its supremacist attitudes which good-hearted, freedom-loving Muslims reject. Muslims, we must remember, risk their lives if they criticize Islam or try to leave Islam. Both actions are punishable by death. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, an Egyptian Orthodox Muslim cleric who is an influential spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, stated in an inadvertent, boy, can you say big words quickly? He stated in an inadvertent, number one, absolutely powerful indictment of Islam, in my opinion, quote, if they had gotten rid of the apostasy punishment, Islam wouldn't exist today. Think about that. Marxists and Islamists have become allies against their common enemy, Judeo-Christian Western and American civilizations. Saul Alinsky, the leftist radical, has been a guiding light to hard-left Democrats for many years, including Hillary Clinton. In his book, Rules for Radicals, he wrote, the organizer's first job is to create the issues or problems. The organizer must first rub raw the resentments of the people of the community. He must search out controversy and issues rather than avoid them, for unless there is controversy, people are not concerned enough to act. In the book Dark Agenda, The War to Destroy Christian America, David Horowitz wrote, Saul Alinsky taught his followers, you don't organize to help the poor and oppressed. You organize for power. I was going to do a Bernie Sanders imitation of that. I think he might agree with all of these statements by Saul Alinsky. A 1960s SDS, a Students for a Democratic Society radical, wrote, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. I think he believes that. Just watch what he says. I'm not a good mimic, but anyway, what the heck. Leftists understand that if they own the minds and hearts of our children, the children of conservatives, they will eventually, probably win victory. Therefore, they've been radicalizing the sources of information that are fed to children and adults for many years, 60 years at least, in the universities, K-12 schools, the media, and Hollywood. Teen Vogue is a hard left source of propaganda, not just fashion, if you were wondering. A writer for the Daily Signal, Jarrett Stepman, recently went to a socialism conference. Teen Vogue hosted a panel at Socialism 2019 called System Change, Not Climate Change. Youth climate activists in conversation with Teen Vogue. The panel moderator was Lucy Diavolo, news and political editor at the publication, who is transgender. I know there's maybe a contradiction in inviting Teen Vogue to a socialism conference, especially because the youth spin-off brand is a magazine so associated with capitalist excess, Diavolo said. If you're not familiar with our work, I encourage you to read Teen Vogue's coverage of social justice issues, capitalism, revolutionary theory, and Karl Marx. Or you can check out the right-wing op-eds that accuse me of clickbait communism and teaching your daughters Marxism and revolution. The panel attendees responded enthusiastically. Suffice to say, the barbarians are beyond the gates. We are in the tower, Diavolo boasted. Leftist words and propaganda are damaging, but the true colors of the left are displayed when they descend into violence. Today, the militant arm of the hard left Democrats is Antifa. You saw the cartoon on our poster. In the 1930s, Antifa, which is short for Antifaschistische Aktion, in my dreadful German, were the German Communist Party's version of the Nazi brown shirts. Today, Antifa is supported by Refuse Fascism, a project of the Revolutionary Communist Party USA. Go to their website, you can see it. Antifa's violence is increasing. The journalist Andy Ngo was recently hospitalized in Portland, Oregon, after a brutal Antifa attack at a rally. In Tacoma, Washington, the Antifa member Willem Van Spronsen firebombed an ICE facility and was shot and killed. The left-wing media downplay Antifa attacks. Even though the Dayton shooter, Connor Betts, is a leftist who appears to support Antifa, the media ignore that. Even after he wrote, "Kill every fascist, Nazis deserve death and nothing else, and I want socialism, and I'll not wait for the idiots to finally come round." Methods of totalitarians include propaganda, lies, and mass delusion. Many Americans aren't aware of the source and method of the leftist narrative that they hear in the media. They simply listen to NPR, read the New York Times, believe it, and that's that. They don't really dig deeper behind it. But the left has been revealing that they have been the source of so much of that for many years. Ion Mihai Pacepa, the former acting chief of Romania's espionage service, wrote, "As a spy chief and a general in the former Soviet satellite of Romania, I produced the very same vitriol Kerry repeated to the US Congress almost word for word and planted it in leftist movements throughout Europe. KGB chairman Yuri Andropov managed our anti-Vietnam War operation. During my last meeting with Andropov, he said wisely, 'Now all we have to do is to keep the Vietnam-era anti-Americanism alive.' And they have done so. The left uses the strategy of repeated lies. If you say John Smith is a child molester and a rapist, and that lie is repeated over and over again by many people, it's almost a surety that John Smith will be ruined with no evidence at all. That's what the left has been doing. But still, not all leftists are conscious liars. Some, I believe, fervently believe that America is evil. When I watch the actress Alyssa Milano sobbing on video about the immigration crisis, as she recently did, in her words, that it's such a terrible thing because it's destroying children's lives because of, quote, arbitrary lines in the sand. I believe she's sincere. I believe she really believes that, even though her judgment about the immigration crisis is botched, because it would be wonderful to remove the arbitrary lines in the sand in the kingdom of heaven on earth, which isn't here yet. But still, millions and millions of people are believers in the leftist narrative about America that is an evil country. Why is that so? How did it happen? Stella Morabito, writing for The Federalist in an article called "How to Escape the Age of Mass Delusion," wrote, the emotional stew in which we are now boiling doesn't allow logic or reason to prevail. We can never fight back as long as we are in the cloud, in the dark, about how our minds can be manipulated. So we absolutely must try to fully understand the methods and tactics of mental coercion and share that knowledge with others as much as possible. She referenced a 1956 book, The Rape of the Mind, The Psychology of Thought Control, Menticide, and Brainwashing, written by the Dutch-American psychoanalyst Joost Meerloo. In his chapter, Mental Contagion and Mass Delusion, Meerloo wrote, "Mass delusion can be induced. It is simply a matter of organizing and manipulating collective feelings in the proper way. If one can isolate the mass, allow no free thinking, no free exchange, no outside corrective, and can hypnotize the group daily with noises, with press and radio and television, with fear and pseudo-enthusiasms, any delusion can be instilled. Delusions, carefully implanted, are difficult to correct. Reasoning no longer has value, for the lower, more animal type of thinking becomes deaf to any thought on a higher level. If one reasons with a totalitarian who has been impregnated with official cliches, he will sooner or later withdraw into his fortress of collective totalitarian thinking. The mass delusion, it gives him his feelings of belonging, of greatness, of omnipotence, is dearer to him than his personal awareness and understanding." To me, that sounds like college. And Charlie will talk about that. And I'm looking forward to it. So, my friends, we must save freedom and save civilization. America is at the 11th hour and 59th minute of a crisis of identity. Will America survive? How long? What brings a civilization to ruin? Dennis Prager stated in recent testimony at the U.S. Senate, "It breaks my heart for America because no good country can survive when its people have contempt for it." What can we do to save America, to save freedom, and to save civilization? I believe that liberals and conservatives first have to affirm that we want to be free and that gaining a life of freedom requires thought and comprehensive dialogue. Totalitarians don't like freedom of thought at all. Orwell wrote in 1984, "Orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness." Finding truth requires questioning. In the 1885 preface to Leaves of Grass, the poet Walt Whitman wrote, "Re-examine all you have been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your own soul." And after that reflection, we must know the enemy, know the hostile forces on the left, how they've been working against the cause of freedom. And then we must use the power of information, education, elections, votes, and the law. The left has done so over and over again. David Horowitz in Dark Agenda talked frequently about the 9 unelected permanent for life Supreme Court justices, changing over time, who have radically damaged America with decisions about prayer in school, abortion, and many other topics, against the will of the American people. Defending free speech is complicated. We don't want to give too much power to government. Matt will speak about solutions to this issue, but just a tidbit from Senator Ted Cruz, who has suggested that there are 3 possible legal methods to stop big tech. Number 1, utilizing Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act by forcing social media platforms to act as platforms like the telephone line, not publishers. Number 2, breaking them up as monopolies. Number 3, hitting them for fraud and breach of contract based on the view that users don't expect to be censored and the platforms are not transparent or accountable. We don't want government to define social media companies as publishers and then force them to censor speech. But finally, the most important thing of all, in my opinion, is for all of us to stand up and fight back. Conservatives have not often been fighting because they're busy with their lives, but leftists are on fire with revolution. To repeat again the words of Teen Vogue's transgender political editor, Lucy Diavolo, the barbarians are beyond the gates. We are in the tower. We must speak out and never apologize for truth-telling. If we apologize to haters because we told the truth, then we betray ourselves and the truth. For what gain? Conservatives have had enormous defeats in the last 60 years. We cannot allow ourselves to give up, though. Conservatives, in my opinion, and liberals together need to go to a spiritual valley forge where we can regroup, toughen up, and train ourselves for victory. I think we need to follow the example of the magnificent armed forces who, in their oath of enlistment, state, "I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic." We should do the same. President Lincoln was asked to replace General Ulysses S. Grant, and he simply said, "I can't spare this man. He fights." Well, President Trump also fights. He's fighting in Manchester right now. Anyway, we couldn't be there. We had to be here. He pushes back against the media, for which he's criticized. But I believe that his sometimes rough responses are needed to fight back against the leftist privileged class, the nomenclatura, who constantly accuse him of being a racist, a Nazi, a Hitler, and then accuse conservatives and Trump supporters of the same litany of lies and insults, all designed to drive us into submission. We cannot let them. To fight that narrative, we need to challenge and debunk the numerous forbidden topics of the left, both in public and in private. Henry Cabot Lodge, the first Senate Majority Leader, stated in 1919, "The United States is the world's best hope. Beware how you trifle with your marvelous inheritance, for if we stumble and fall, freedom and civilization everywhere will go down in ruin." I'm reminded of Shakespeare's Henry V. King Henry's forces won the Battle of Agincourt, but on October 25th, 1415, they were vastly outnumbered, 9,000 to 30,000. He urged his soldiers to fight with honor and know that on St. Crispian's Day, we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, and I will add, sisters too. Thank you. So I guess we have 5 minutes of Q&A for this section. Yes?
I used to be a Democrat not so long ago, and I have to say this is an issue that just it doesn't only affect Republicans. This affects independents, moderates, anyone who even slightly deviates from anything that the left says. How do you think people can be brought into the fold? Because this isn't just a Republican issue, as you said. It's a liberal and conservative issue.
I agree. And let me turn on this microphone. If anybody needs a mic to speak so they can be heard, we have one here. I think it can be things can change by dialogue, by free speech, by comprehensive communication about these issues. The biggest problem I think that we're facing is that the left does not want to allow us to speak. So if we can speak, I mean, in my extended family with my relatives, I'm the only Republican I know. It's extremely difficult to talk about any of these issues because I think the mass delusion, the boiling pot that Morabito mentioned, things are so hot that on the left, and liberals have received that infection, in my opinion. They've become so infected with the idea that anyone that supports issues of freedom are haters. And we're not haters. They're hateful toward us. So somehow we have to, I think it can only be solved through speech and dialogue, but it's very difficult.
Especially when you have certain candidates on the Democratic ticket saying that there's no more room for dialogue about certain things.
That way lies totalitarianism. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, in the back. If you want to stand up and...
I'm in the back.
Okay.
Good place to be. We always used to be there at church, too. So good looks where you always sit in the back.
Could you stand up so people can hear?
Can everybody not hear me?
Okay. Go ahead.
It's just a historical note. I was reading a book on, I can't even remember the title, but talking about Joseph Goebbels. And to go back to Facebook, et cetera, is that historically, Joseph Goebbels they used to put on, particularly for young people. And this one play was about this group of really bad people who had all the money, who owned all the stores, and they used to go into homes and murder young children. And then the big good guys, the guys in the brown suits who would come in, the handsome Nordic men who would come in, although they didn't call them Jews, they were the Jews. And so 1938, 1936, 1930, at the very beginning of it, they would begin to use these types of plays, if you will, to indoctrinate their young people. The kids were just mortified, horrified, and very much afraid of these Jews. And so they became part of, the Hitler Youth and all these things like this. And those people grew up to run the concentration camps and all these things. So it's real interesting that, I'd say there's nothing new under the sun, but the whole point is to indoctrinate. And it began at people would just learn history instead of forget it. Or just, anyway, I just thought that it goes to Facebook, it goes to Twitter, it goes to all of these things, Hollywood, etc., that they use the media to, in effect, indoctrinate people without people really even knowing. But I thought it was interesting that girls said that without the radio, paraphrase, they would never have been able to accomplish what they accomplished in Nazi Germany without indoctrinating the young people and bringing them up, which is really where it starts. So.
Thank you, that's very true. And of course, it highlights the fact that the Americans' protection of free speech is so momentous and necessary for the world. It hasn't been everywhere else, so we've got to preserve it. Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Yes, somebody recently said that a racist was a conservative who was winning an argument with a liberal. And I thought there's a lot of truth in that, but the words racist, Islamophobe, xenophobe, homophobe, misogynist, etc., are used primarily to intimidate through smear and marginalize and delegitimize people when they don't really have any actually good arguments. But I'd be curious, Peter, if you could, I have my own strategies for responding to such things. I'd be curious to know what you would recommend people say when they hear that being spoken about somebody they know or possibly about themselves. How would you respond effectively to push back against that?
The first thing I would say is that if you're in an argument and you start calling someone racist or any of the phobes, it means you have nothing to say. They don't have any content. They don't want to debate. They don't want to dialogue. They want to shut the other person down because they can't win the argument. And I think that one of the things that I've realized is that everyone wants to be free, including a totalitarian, including a dictator. No one wants to be told what to do. So if we go back to the person who's using the phobic language and all that kind of stuff and racism, I start by saying, do you want to be free? Do you want to be told what to say? Do you want to live in Orwell's 1984? No? Well, neither do I. So we've got common ground. But the phobe language it's intellectually lazy and stupid. That's my response.
Thank you.
Yes. If you want to, sure. If you want to use we should have a wireless mic, but we don't, so.
2 quick points. Whenever I'm called a racist, I just fold like a cheap suit. So thank you for the advice. I was wondering, our current politics today with a lot of this stuff that's going on, do you think it was accelerated by the outcome of the election of 2008, presidential election?
2008.
Yes. Had it gone differently, do you think we would be?
I don't know.
Would biological men be competing with women and winning trophies, and people be making Baker's Day cakes for weddings they don't want to bake cakes for? I mean, it's all kinds of stuff like that that society just seems to have accepted.
I think Barack Obama increased racism in our country. If that's an answer to your question.
Okay, so you think that was a consequential election as far as?
Yes, no, I do, because I think he stood up there after like a police shooting that wasn't racist, for example. He would say it was racist, and I think that imagine if he'd been Martin Luther King, standing up there saying, let's heal between races. Let's have all the races come together and have, ceremonies of healing where we can love each other. He would have had an incredible effect. I believe that he's divided the races more in his tenure than for decades before, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Well, let's see, I think I've taken up my 5 minutes, so we'll have more after that. Let's see. So, now we're in for a real treat. Someone younger than myself will speak. Our next speaker is younger than you, and you're younger than me.
Closer than you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Charlie Honkonen, a rising senior at the University of Maine in Orono, majoring in economics. He's from South Berwick, so he's a Mainer. And after he graduates, we have to keep him in Maine. We have to tie him to the stump of a pine tree. Charlie is the president of the UMaine College Republicans, as well as the chair of the Maine Federation of College Republicans. He's a big Trump supporter. He's identified as a conservative since 2015 when he began to think about how he would vote in his first presidential election. Since then, in his time leading the UMaine Club, Charlie has worked to grow membership numbers from 5 attendees per meeting to upwards of 20 to 25 regular attendees over the past year at UMaine. Hey, even with setbacks of losing membership. He also has worked with other club leadership to quadruple their online presence with their Facebook page, currently boasting over 1,300 followers. As a conservative student, Charlie brings a truly unique perspective on the topic of free speech and the war taking place on the college campus. Let's welcome Charlie. And can you reset that?
Thanks so much, Peter. We're good to go?
Good to go.
Excellent. One point that you just brought up, speaking of my introduction, here, I'm curious, who here follows us on Facebook, UMaine College Republicans? Yeah, that's better than I expected. If you don't, and you do have a Facebook, check us out after the meeting, UMaine College Republicans on Facebook. We have a pretty big membership, I think we're over 1,400 now, actually, so we've gained over 100 followers since I wrote that introduction for Peter, but that just goes to show you how excited students, young people, and even folks age such as yourself are about politics and about getting involved right now. So I want to talk about probably 3 different things really today. I want to speak about my experiences in the university itself. So I'm a senior. I've been at UMaine for 3 years now, or this will be my 3rd year. I started there my sophomore year after transferring from Worcester Polytech down in Mass for a litany of reasons, part of which has driven me to be the conservative that I am today. I've experienced, how many times have we ran into the administration now, Jeremiah? 3 or 4 times now, but I've had to fight alongside club members to retain my status as a student at the university due to hate against conservatives, and so I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about my experience growing the club through social media, which I think is one place that conservatives are a little bit lacking right now, and I think we could all do a better job speaking up and speaking out against censorship that Peter spoke of earlier on social media. And then the last and final thing is I want to touch on how you can help the universities in the state of Maine, and not just state of Maine, but nationwide, and how you can help students like myself, Jeremiah, and others kind of fight socialism. That's what it is. I know, it's a scary S word. You haven't heard it since the 60s, but I'm sure you've heard it a lot recently. It is coming back in full force. Everyone knows AOC. Everyone knows the democratic socialists that are suddenly now all the rage, and it's quite concerning to me, and that's why we really need to fight that. So who here has been to a college campus in the past, let's say, 2 years? I think that's about 20% of the room? So a lot of people haven't. Do you guys have any idea about the current climate? Because it is not good. For those of you who haven't been, and for those of you who have, maybe you've realized this, I would say about 80% of the teachers and professors at our college campuses identify as Democrat. easily. Another half of those, I would probably say, self-identify as socialists. And that is through a careful and well-orchestrated plan of the Democratic Party, of the left, of socialists over the last 40 years. And they are working to indoctrinate youth, just as Peter was speaking about. And it is coming to fruition right now. You walk into a classroom on anthropology. We spoke about this a lot last year. One of our members is a part of this anthropology class, and every week we spoke about it in our meetings. And if you walk into that class and you praise Karl Marx, you praise the ideals of socialism, of Stalin, of Lenin, you're applauded. You're given an A. Professor says, great thinking, great work. If you walk in with a simple red hat that says the most simple words of "Make America Great Again," you are called out by the professor, you are called hateful, you are asked to take that hat off, and these are experiences that have happened to our members on campus. Believe it or not, is that surprising to you people? No. That's scary. That is scary. That is not surprising, that is scary. That should be surprising, right? Shouldn't campuses be a bastion of free speech? Absolutely. What else is the point of a college campus if not to learn, if not to broaden your understanding, to broaden your horizon, to increase your knowledge about other ideologies? And that's being taken away. It's being taken away, and it's going fast. In my 2 years, or almost 2 years now, of running this club, it has been really tough listening to the stories from students and working with others to, I want to talk about, I'll move tracks here. I want to talk about an event we did. We set up a table in the University Union, and we said 3 simple words. Do you like freedom? Everyone here like freedom? Yeah. Absolutely. Do you want to know how many people liked freedom that day? 0. Oh, and sorry if I'm making the white supremacist symbol. Apparently that's what that is now. Go figure. For those of you who haven't heard about that, Donald Trump kind of likes to do this during his speeches sometimes to emphasize his points. And so some leftists started to go online and say, this means white supremacism, because there's a W right there. White power, that's what it is. This means white power. The OK symbol for 40 years means white power now simply because, yeah, right, exactly. Simply because one person went online to an online forum, to Reddit, to 4chan or whatever, and they said, this means this because of this. And now a lot of people believe it. That's how things like this spread. And that's really concerning. So that's kind of the current atmosphere on the college campus. It's hostile, it's not open to dialogue, and it's really hard for conservative students like myself, like Jeremiah, like Stanley here, who's just graduated. Thanks for coming, Stanley. It's great to see you. We have trouble speaking out. Stanley himself here, we were at, everyone knows Brett Kavanaugh, of course. Awesome. Thank you, Susan Collins, by the way. Let's give a round of applause to Susan Collins for that amazing Senate floor speech and her vote to confirm Justice Brett Kavanaugh. But we were at a rally in support of Brett Kavanaugh back during his confirmation. And Stanley walked up and he wanted to, give an explanation. We'd listened to, maybe 5 or 10 folks from the left who were there telling their stories. He wanted to tell his story. And he wasn't 30 seconds in that they started shouting him down, and they went as far as to call him the N-word. Stanley's an African-American student, and...
No, I'm an American student.
American student, there you go. Thank you, Stanley. That's how far they went, and they did not even give us a chance to speak, and then they marched off. Right? they just marched off, and they didn't even listen to us.
Well, they marched through me, actually.
Right. They kind of surrounded him, and it's kind of intimidating, right? Anyways, that was one of the first times when I really felt on our campus, wow.
Just like brown shirts.
Exactly. And so ever since then, we've been fighting, and we're still fighting today. So I spoke about the campus climate. Next thing I want to talk about is some of the events, another event we did last year. It was called the Free Speech Ball. We did this event to kind of raise awareness about free speech. We held a giant beach ball out on the University Mall, and we invited students all day. Hey, come write whatever you want. We actually got a pretty positive response to that. But the thing is, this is 3 weeks after we were originally scheduled to have the event, because it took us 2 weeks to fight through the muck and approval process to host a simple event on the University Mall simply because we're a conservative group on campus. I know we're not the only group who has trouble doing this. However, if we were the campus Dems, we wouldn't even have to ask anybody. It's as simple as that. There is constant censorship going on from the administration to college students, to college groups, to groups such as ourselves, and it is appalling. It is, quite frankly, appalling. We ourselves have faced persecution. We have had to fight appeal processes. We were labeled as discriminatory harassers, and we had to go and appeal these decisions brought by biased administrators. It's quite frankly unbelievable. So what can you do? How are we doing on time here? Am I about probably 15 minutes in, 10 minutes in? Excellent. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm respecting our time limit because we have a lot to get to, and I know we have a lot to say. But I want to encourage each and every one of you in the next year, even 2 years, make your way onto your campus, whether it's USM, whether it's UMaine Machias, UMaine Farmington, UMaine Orono, or even any of the private schools, although I caution you because they're a bit trickier. Go there, try and speak with the students, see what the climate is. And I'm sorry, but all of what I'm saying is true. You're going to be surprised or you're not, but it is a scary place out there when it comes to people preaching socialism and people simply being against any form of thought that is not their own. We'll do Q&A after. Thank you. So go to a local college campus and speak with the students and try and understand their ideas, because another thing Peter touched on that is so true, and it happens to us all the time, is just the labeling. The racist, the phobe, the homophobes, Islamophobe, transphobe, I can't even think of all of them. The LGBTQ, LMNOP, let me list the whole alphabet because I'm not going to get everything for everybody. It's just obscene at this point, and leftists go there when they can't win an argument. That's absolutely right. We have reached out, believe it or not, to other groups on campus, the socialists, the Democrats, and we say, guys, we want to schedule debates. We want to get these events going. We want to have the students exposed to multiple different opinions. You know what they say? They say one of two things. Nothing, or we're not looking to debate you. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because when you start talking and you talk about facts, conservatives always come out on top. Leftists and some liberals talk with feelings, conservatives talk with facts. That's the way it goes. A saying told to me, I can't remember who, says that at 15 or 20 years old, if you're a liberal or you're a conservative, you don't have a heart. If at 40 years old and you're a liberal, you don't have a brain.
Winston Churchill.
That was Winston Churchill? Thank you. Yes. Something like that. I'm probably misquoting it, but that's just the way it is. I don't have any better explanation than that. It's wild. But so next steps for us on campus. This year we're looking to do a lot more events. We're bringing more conservative speakers. We're hoping to invite Larry Lockman. Everyone knows Larry, right? He's awesome. He's a congressman here in the state, and our state legislator. He's great. He's going to make a Senate bid, I believe, this year or next year for Maine State Senate. Everyone support Larry in that. He's awesome. We had Nick Isgro to the campus last year. I know he's a little controversial among Republicans, but that's okay. It's okay to have diversity in thought among your party. What's not okay is to not allow diversity of thought, right? And that's what leftists want. They want to take away diversity of thought and simply promote diversity that's, quite frankly, irrelevant most of the time. And that's concerning. So we're going to have Larry, we're going to have Nick. Don't spread this too far. We have a couple people talking to Alex Jones. You never know. might have some really crazy speakers here this year at UMaine. But we're just looking to drum up attention, because attention is what you need to start a dialogue. Because otherwise they're going to shut down your dialogue. They're going to stop you from speaking, and they're going to censor you. And that's what it's all about on the left today, because they can't win an argument without telling you to shut up, sit down, you're a racist, you're a bigot, go home. And that's really sad. Who here has been called a racist, actually? I don't know if you asked that question already, but racist, homophobe, what's that? Fascist. Probably everyone in this room. And the people who haven't, that's because you probably are afraid to speak out about your true opinions, because they will label you that. They will label you that if you don't agree with them. And I want to encourage all of you that didn't raise your hand there, don't be afraid of their labels. Don't be afraid of their labels, because that's all they are. They're irrelevant. They don't mean anything. And when you say, well, why am I a racist? Can you give me an example? They really can't. They really can't, because all they have are their feelings. And their feelings aren't made up of anything. They're angry, they're mad, they're frustrated because they didn't get what they wanted in 2016. America got what it deserved, a president who represents the people of America, not a liar, not a criminal, and they're angry still about it. Everyone saw the protests on the streets, the riots after the election in 2016. You better believe that that's a one-sided thing. I don't know anyone in this room who would be, we'd all be sad when, which is not going to happen, by the way. If Trump didn't get elected in 2020, we'd be sad, but we'd move on with our lives. We'd keep fighting, but we wouldn't be having temper tantrums in the street. We wouldn't be canceling our college class to let students wallow in their self-despair and self-pity and just miss out on content. That happened at probably every single school. I was there at Worcester Polytech, and I got emails saying, class will be canceled tomorrow. Take time to, reflect and consider your emotions and calm down and be in your safe space. Because we understand if you can't handle anything today. Grow up. You're in college. You're not in high school anymore. You're not in preschool. Go to your class and do the work. And don't wimp out due to, lousy emotional structure. Like, come on. Kids don't have any backbone these days. And it's really concerning. I know, being a kid myself,
You're a
young man, sure. I'm concerned. I'm really concerned for my peers, for young kids growing up in preschool and in kindergarten and in primary school nowadays. I don't know what kind of experience they're having, but I don't think it's good. I don't think it's positive, and I think it's very negative, indoctrinating, just as Peter was talking about. So, to help, go to your local college campus. Speak to the students. Donate to your local groups. Go to their events. Drum up support. And that's really all we can ask of you. Volunteer. Be active online. Don't back down. Don't back down. That's one of the biggest ones. I know when I was first coming into my beliefs and first kind of growing up as a young man in my 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, I'm 21 now, so that was a few years ago. I found it tough to speak out. I found it tough to not back down when confronted, when called these names like racist, homophobe, etc. And nowadays, I spoke to a reporter at CPAC, and he said, "Do you support Trump's transgender ban in the military?" And And I said, well, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the people who he's not allowing in the military probably have some deep-seated, whether or not, whether they're mental issues or whatever it is, they have some things going on, and they're probably not fit to serve. I understand that. We want a military who's fit to serve, whether it's a man or whether it's a woman in whatever capacity. I respect that. And he said, well, what do you think about gay marriage? Personally, I'm not a devout Christian. I'm okay with gay marriage. I understand people who are not due to their religious beliefs, and I'm okay with that. But I said, I'm okay with gay marriage myself. And he said, well, how can you be okay with gay marriage and not be okay, and also be okay with his transgender military ban? I said, well, it's a completely different issue. I'm also okay with, bake shops denying that they won't make a cake for that wedding. I'm okay with the wedding, and I'm also okay with Johnny Cake Shop owner just saying, no, I don't want to bake a cake for that. Because it's a completely different issue. It's an issue of religious freedom versus personal freedom. And I'm okay with that. And so I didn't back down in that conversation. I said it straight to his face. He wanted to catch me out saying something that, he thought was unforgivable. And he would have the whole camera in my face, microphone up. I didn't let him because I'm not afraid to back down about my points because I understand I'm in the right because I have the facts to back me. And that's what you need to understand. You need to understand that you are in the correct state of mind because the facts back up your opinions. And so that's what I'll leave you with. Don't back down. Don't be afraid to speak out. And make sure everyone knows that we are the majority. Trump said it before, the silent majority. We will win in 2020. We will re-elect President Donald Trump for 4 more years. I will bet $1,000 on it. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you, everybody. We'll do some Q&A. Heidi?
A nice job, Charlie, and it's been fun to watch you develop. You're turning into a warrior, and we need warriors, so I thank you. And you're learning the finesse of being a warrior. My question for you is on the college campus, percentage-wise, what would you say the percentage of the students that are there that are engaged in this whole political debacle compared to those who are engaged in their academic focus?
Well, I think there's a big overlap there. I think most of the people who are engaged in the political debacle are also engaged academically, because to be engaged politically, you have to, be pretty academic, right? I'm kind of tripping over my own words there, but that's basically it. I would say percentage engaged politically, like I said, we have 25 members in our club currently, 25 active members. I expect that to grow this year with new freshmen coming in. We didn't lose many seniors. Stanley, we're sorry to lose you, of course. But I would say maybe 20% are engaged politically, and that's probably on the high end. It's probably lower than that. And I think it's a combination of time management, priorities, laziness, and just not caring. Because kids on campus don't really understand yet, most of them, what's at stake. And I'm blessed to comprehend that at this point in my life, but I think a lot of kids who are on the campus don't. 18 years old, coming on as freshmen, they want to party, they want to go out, they want to go drinking, they want to, do whatever is cool. They don't want to sit in some room once a week and listen to me talk about why we need to go knock doors for, the next political candidate. It'll be Eric Brakey in 2020 for Congress, I hope. Yes. Get rid of Jared Golden. I mean, I know we're in Cumberland, but still. And yeah, does that answer your question?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Right behind Heidi.
Charlie, thank you for being here. And you mentioned the struggle with the administration. Have you had many speakers? And if you have you felt it was adequate security? Or were you just like, I don't know?
We have had a couple speakers to the university. We haven't done the best job advertising some of them, so we didn't have great attendance. We did a small lunch and learn where we we had free lunch for everybody. They loved that, the free. And they heard the free and they said, oh, is this a socialist event or something? No, we're just generous people. Where all of us, we called it Meet the Deplorables. So myself, Jeremiah, the rest of our exec board on the club, we kind of spoke about why we're conservative. And that drew a pretty good attendance. But this year we're looking to get more high-profile speakers. The tricky part is it's difficult to get funding for politically based speakers due to, the biases of the student government. So in the future, if we're able to get more high-profile speakers, I imagine the fight is going to be in getting them approved based on a lot of monotony that the university is going to push on us, such as you need to pay $20,000 to get the campus secure for this event because Antifa is threatening us with bomb threats, for example, which happens all the time. So that will be the struggle then.
Talk about the Deck the Wall party. We had our one issue there.
Oh yeah, real quick, we had a party. Anyone hear about our Deck the Wall party? Over a year ago, almost a year ago now. It was our Christmas party back in the end of 2018. We called it Deck the Wall. How controversial, I know. Deck the halls. We like to build the wall. That was the theme. That was it. We put that out, and instantly, we're excluding students. We are racists. We are, bigots. All the words, of course. The administration contacts us. They say, you need to change the narrative of your party. You need to shut down your party. We said, heck no. We haven't done anything wrong. We're not changing it. And we eventually put out an apology about it. But that's something we're not doing again because we're not afraid of what we're speaking about. And so that was one of the struggles we faced. I also hand over here.
Have you given any thought to the root cause of why the college instructors and professors, they don't seem to follow the American philosophy of freedom? What drives them to be on the other side of the road?
Mm-hmm. I don't know a lot extensive about this topic. My understanding is and it seems pretty clear to me, it is a long-standing, put my tinfoil hat on here, but not really, because it's a long-standing effort by communist nations, by communists in our country, to overthrow and unseat the ideologies of democracy. And they start by instilling communist, far-left professors in schools, indoctrinating children, and that's how you shift the ideology of a nation. You start with the children, and they grow up and they become the leaders, just as Peter was saying. We got time for one more, maybe?
One more.
In the back there.
Yes, are you familiar with Candace Owens?
I am, yes.
Would you consider inviting her, and what do you think would happen? She's a black woman who's been called a white supremacist.
We're working on getting Candace to campus, yes. That's one of the ones we're working on.
What do you think will happen based on past experience in this particular case?
Oh, I'm sure they'll be outraged. They're outraged about everything they don't agree with, so I imagine we'll have to go through a whole process with the university where we say, hey, we're inviting this speaker. Well, you can't do that. Well, why not? BS reason why. I'll say a bullshit reason why. The president said it. Why can't I? Anywho, they'll try and stop us, shut us down, but we won't let it happen. All right, that's all the time I have for.
Thank you, Charlie. We'll have more Q&A after Matt speaks. Yep. So, our final speaker, who will bring an interesting take on some legislative issues. Matthew Gagnon is the Chief Executive Officer of the Maine Heritage Policy Center and has held that post since 2014. Prior to his tenure at MHPC, Matt spent 8 years working in national politics in Washington, D.C., most recently as a senior strategist for the Republican Governors Association. He's a columnist for the Bangor Daily News, which is pronounced Bangor, not Banger, right? Writing about Maine and national politics for the paper since August 2011, and is also currently a co-host of the WGAN Morning News Show. Matt grew up in Hampton, Maine, excuse me. Hamden? Oh, what do you know? And graduated from the University of Maine at Orono in 2004 with a BA in political science. He lives in Yarmouth, Maine with his wife and 4 children. So let's welcome Matt.
Well, they say that brevity is the soul of wit, and I know that we're a little bit long on time here, so I'll try to truncate this as much as possible so we can kind of bang it out, and I can clean up here a little bit and get us into the Q&A and some of the good conversation we'll have. So I've heard, it's funny, sitting here listening to the conversations and the questions and whatnot, it's irresistible to try to jump in and answer some of the ones that you hear. Because we're talking about huge, huge societal questions. And how you solve them is kind of what I'm here to tell you about. I mean, I'm not going to give you some sort of a fix-all solution in any way, shape, or form, so don't expect that, because there are none, by the way. But I think it is important to kind of identify some of the things that are going on in the trends and what's been happening and why. Bill, you asked the fantastic question, sort of why do college campuses have what seems like an infestation of leftist leaders and professors and associate professors and TAs and everybody else, right? And then there was also another question I think you had asked about whether or not the country would be a little bit different if 2008 had gone differently. If somehow in the past, if we had elected a different leader here or a different leader there, would things have really changed all that much? And to sort of half answer both of those questions before I get into what I was really going to say, I think the answer to your question is no. I don't think so. And the main reason I think that that's the case is because we've been dealing with the things that made today possible for 30, 40, 50 years. They have been gradually accumulating. It's almost like compound interest, right? You have just a little bit of a change at a time, and things are shifting in just little minute ways. But they collect upon themselves, and they really do change things in a wholesale manner. I think there's a really great book that I'd recommend, which also deals with your question, Bill, about what happened in college campuses and what happened to the concept of free speech, specifically. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind. By Jonathan Haidt. If any of you have read it, it's a fantastic book. I know you got to see a hand there. That's fantastic. Jonathan Haidt is a social psychologist at New York University, and he co-wrote it with Greg Lukianoff. I never get his name right. He's the president of FIRE, which is the free speech on campus group. It's free expression. I'll never get the acronym right, but it works on free speech on college campus issues. And so they wrote a book that basically tried to examine what sort of happened to create this shift on college campuses specifically, but also in general society about hostility to free speech. I mean, if you see some of the polling that's been done on this with people that are, a little bit younger than me, so the millennial generation, I'm the last Xer basically, so anybody younger than me is a millennial. And if you look into their attitudes about free speech, it can get kind of horrifying. Asked whether or not on college campuses right now, so some of the younger millennials, whether or not they think that it's appropriate for the administration to step in and stop offensive speech. I don't know what the exact number is. I'm sort of paraphrasing these studies, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40, 50, 60% of students say that it's appropriate for that to happen. As we just heard, from Charlie, I think you're on a college campus. This is pretty much the place for free expression, right? You are supposed to be questioning things. You remember the old bumper sticker, question authority, question everything, all those types of questions? That is what a college experience is supposed to be about. You're supposed to learn things that you didn't know. You're supposed to be exposed to ideas you've never heard, and you're supposed to consider them, argue against them, debate them, and come up with your own opinion at the end, but be exposed to them. Exposure therapy, if you will. From my own experience, I guess to give you a little quick background on me, I actually was Charlie about 15 years ago or so. I was the president of the College Republicans back in 99, 2000, I guess. And you're in for something, by the way, because election years for presidential races, you have far more than 25 members. I think I was member number 3 when I joined, and by the end of that election, we were up to 200 and something. So good luck. It's going to be a lot of fun. But in any event, the real point is, when I entered college, I didn't, I had some values and I had some beliefs. My parents are pretty conservative, so I kind of leaned conservative, but I didn't know why. I just had a general impression on the world. And it was at college where I was exposed to both people who thought like me and people who didn't. There were a lot less people who thought like me, but they were there. And I got a lot of exposure to new and interesting arguments for, why certain issues are viewed by conservatives in certain ways. I also got the opposite side. And I don't know if any of you guys know Amy Fried. She's a political science professor for the University of Maine. Charlie certainly does. Amy Fried was also there when I was there, and she's now a columnist for the Bangor Daily News. Is actually on the opposite page of me, I think on Wednesdays. And when I was going there, she had not outed herself as a Democratic operative and leftist at all. It was wink, wink, nod, nod the whole time, and we all sort of knew, but she wasn't open about it. And what I'm going to tell you about my story, I think you need to replicate if you're going to really solve this problem, okay? The answer to all these problems is you, at the end of the day. When I was exposed to her Government 100 class, POS 100, it was so horrifying and so just abject, disgusting to listen to some of the things that were happening in that classroom. I signed up for her next class. And it's funny, but that's what conservatives don't typically do. Most of my friends did not take any more of her classes. I went to every single class she offered, and I argued with her the whole time. Okay? And to be honest with you, thank you. I had no real interest or hope in winning the argument with her. I didn't think I was ever going to convert her. She's hopeless. It's not going to happen. But what I did find was that discussing it, and you don't have to be disagreeable to disagree, right? I mean, these were not hyper-contentious conversations. I was never going to come to her opinion. She was never going to come to mine. But we had back and forths, and they were actually reasonably productive. The thing that it did is it sharpened my own opinion about what I believed. It really did. And it also let the kid that was behind me, who was too afraid to speak up, hear something that actually said what he wanted to actually say, but wasn't really ready to do. I have gone to so many events that are not conservative confabs, like I think we may have here today, right? And at these events, oftentimes you'll hear people stand up and speak and give their mind on healthcare, or gay marriage, or abortion, or taxes, or spending, or anything, right? And I've noticed at many of these types of events that you only hear liberals. And the neat thing about being the CEO of the Maine Heritage Policy Center and being involved in conservative politics as deeply as I am is that I know about 3/4 of you. So when you guys are in a room, I see you, and I know that you're there, and I know that you definitely want to say something, and I know that you have opinions, but nobody ever does it. Nobody ever stands up and actually starts expressing, and I get why. I've been there, right? If you stand up, you are going to get every accusation in the world. You're going to get every ism tossed at you. You're going to be tossed pejoratives. You're going to be called names. You're going to, and frankly, even if you aren't, it's still exhausting, right? To just get in and engage at that level. And especially when you feel like you're outnumbered significantly. If you feel like you're 1 or 2 against 20, it's very, very unlikely that you're really going to want to even subject yourself to that. My lesson I hope for you today in what I'm going to tell you is don't do that. Because there's not 2 people in that room. There's 20. They're just really terrified of talking. They're really, really terrified of talking. And you need to be that voice for them, because that will give them the confidence to stand up themselves and add their voice to yours and be able to create a movement, because that's the real solution to this. Originally, I was going to sit here and I was going to tell you a bunch of things that could be done for tech policy specifically. I have a real big background in tech policy. When I was in Washington, D.C., everything that I did revolved around social media management, online advertising, database work. When people were doing door knocking on the ground, I was basically the tech guy that was working with their apps that would make sure that we were getting accurate information about what they were doing on the ground. So I know the global politics manager at Facebook. I used to work for her. I know the people at Twitter that make these decisions. Like I've been exposed to these people, so I have a lot of background in it and a lot of ideas about what we could be doing to make that environment better. But the funny thing is I think I can probably cover a lot of that very, very quickly for you. There are 3 things that I think you can really do in general about not only tech policy specifically, which I'll do with the first 2, but also all of this that we're talking about. With online social media and technology, you can, number 1, and you said this yourself, Peter, you can break up the companies, right? This is one of those Ted Cruz ideas he was talking about. Facebook is a gargantuan, huge, gigantic company, right? They own WhatsApp, they own Instagram, they own Facebook, they own a lot of things you don't know they own. And they have gotten their tentacles in everything, right? So if you think that the lack of competition and other voices being in that universe And not having a very competitive, market-oriented environment has resulted in them behaving poorly and not taking your opinion into account and actively oppressing you, which, by the way, they are. Then that's one route you can choose. If you do it, who knows what happens? You might have 50 little Facebooks and 50 little tyrants tormenting you the whole way, or you could have a good outcome where people are actually competing and you might have some alternatives. The second option, which you also heard about from Peter's talk, is to regulate them, right? The Section 230 issue is certainly alive and well. There's a bill in Congress about that that's debated very highly. Essentially what it boils down to is it would attempt to use the government, the FTC, the FCC, to force these organizations and these companies to take you seriously and not abuse you, frankly. They would basically change the way that these companies are, or what they're considered, the publisher issue, and whether or not they are basically facilitating speech or whether they are the speaker themselves, and it changes how they can be regulated by the federal government. And if you do that, the hope is that you're going to be able to make sure that they play by fair rules and allow you to speak. Okay? And the third option, all due respect to the third option that Ted Cruz thinks that there is about suing them for breach of service, will never go anywhere, trust me. The real third option is you, which is what I talked about at the beginning of my speech here. You are a solution in and of yourself, okay? Markets exist for a reason, and you're in one, whether you know it or not. If you are going home tonight and you are getting on Facebook, you are making a choice. If you are bored by me talking right now and you're looking at your phone, and nobody's doing that, thank God. You are making a choice. You're participating in this system. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You can voluntarily walk away from these places that are abusing you. And they are abusing you. You heard 1/100th of the things that they're doing right now. Okay? You are the enemy to the people in Palo Alto that are looking at you and your opinions. They are actively managing them. They're not just throwing off Alex Jones, who I consider to be nutty, but you are being thrown off if you are an average person who has an average opinion. You are at least suspended sometimes. It's pretty scary to see actually a lot of the things that are happening as it relates to free speech on social media. You know, we just of course had a couple mass shootings, and you know, one of the things that was proposed as a response to it is the red flag laws, right? Well, you have, I think, a really good example of what would happen if a red flag law was instituted in this country, and it's called Facebook, right? Your neighbors and the people who are in your family who don't think like you find whatever you say offensive and think that you're not really mentally capable of doing many things, including owning a gun. They report you, and somebody comes in and knocks on your door and starts actually making you justify the right that the Constitution guarantees you, right? That's what they're doing on Facebook right now, not about guns, but it's the same type of concept, right? It's basically mass opinion oppressing a group that feels like they can be oppressed by a majority of people that are in this company. So you as a market can do something about that. You can make your voice heard, walk away, and make them feel immense financial pain in the process, right? They get revenue dollars by selling things to you. Okay, I know because I used to be the guy buying those ads. That's a lot of money. Donald Trump, by the way, made better use of Facebook and spent more money on it than any presidential candidate, including Barack Obama, in the history of this country. And good for him. He did a good job with it. But the point is that's happening. You're being marketed to on a daily basis. Whether it's a Russian bot or whether it's Donald Trump, you're being marketed to, and you don't have to be. And one of the things that's been a problem in this market is that someone who could create an alternative to what we see today doesn't really today feel like there's a market for something else. But there sure would be if 50 or 60 million conservatives stopped using the platform, right? And the reason why I'm highly emphasizing this as sort of the solution to not only big tech's problems, but also society's problems, making it about you and taking ownership yourself about all these questions, is because, quite frankly, my conservatism does not allow me to trust the government, right? My biggest problem with most tech policy solutions, particularly the Section 230 issue, is that I do not want a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. deciding whose speech is good, who gets protected, who does not get protected. And the thing about it that scares me the most is what happens when President Elizabeth Warren and a Senate majority of 62 Democrats, which someday will be elected, right, whether we like it or not, Elections have consequences and there's cycles and everything. The pendulum swings all ways. There will be a moment in time, just like there was in 2008, where you have a supermajority in Congress and a very activist president who hate you. And if you hand over the power to start regulating your speech on the internet because you wanted them to protect you in the first place, you are just asking for really, really bad things to happen to you. So I don't trust it. I would encourage you to not trust it either. I understand and believe in the motivations being pure of the people that are pushing ideas like that right now, but be very skeptical of any solution that involves the government. Okay? Which brings it back to you. Okay? If you want this to change, this is a packed room. Stand up and do something about it. You know, the funny thing about social media and technology is that there is a drastically oversized opinion of its impact. There is a lot of very, very good research about this that I used to read when I was a practitioner of this stuff that basically says that persuasion on social media doesn't exist, right? Ask yourself the last time you were convinced by your friend that likes Hillary Clinton that Hillary Clinton was a good person and you should vote for her. Doesn't happen very often. And by the way, it doesn't happen in the other direction either. There is no great mass of feeble-minded people in the middle that haven't really made up their mind yet that see a Facebook post and say, aha, yes, that was a good point, and I think I'm going to change my mind. What they do though, is they organize. This is where this is actually a tool that could be utilized that I think it works very well for political people of all stripes. It allows you to find people and get them to work in the real world. That was always my goal when I did that stuff. I didn't want you to post on Facebook. I don't care, and no one else does either. Okay? Get off the bloody computer. Get out and knock on a door. Make a phone call. Talk to a neighbor. That is what, I mean, everybody was terrified of the vaunted 2008 and 2012 Barack Obama online mega, campaign that he had created. That was really, really misleading because he may have advertised $100 million on Facebook, but if you knew what those advertiser dollars did, is that they identified humans to go do things or to give him money. Right? It was those two things. It was give me money so that I can buy TV ads and actually do persuasion to middle America, or I can do a real robust ground game door knocking campaign and get people out. I don't know how many of you people kept track of who came to your door in 2018 when Janet Mills was running for governor, or 2016 when the presidential race was happening. But I know that in my house, as a 5 hard Republican in pretty much everybody's book, I got no less than a dozen Democratic left-leaning groups knock on my door, leave me a pamphlet or something. That's how organized they were. That's how aggressive they were. They were literally trying to expand the map everywhere. And it's because they had this very sophisticated program that was built on human contact. Okay? So if you want to fight against it, you can obsess over Facebook and Twitter all you want. But no tweet, outside of perhaps the president's, right, is going to have the effect that you talking to your next door neighbor has, or you making a phone call has, or you organizing a meeting of 5 people and talking to them about your ideas and why you think you're very passionate about the country and the direction that it's going and you want it to change. That is the reality of how things change in this country. It's never going to change. That's always the way it's going to be, no matter what tech gadget gets created and no matter what whiz kid comes around and telling you that they're going to change the world with a Facebook ad. So my advice, to wrap it up, is to unplug and get out in the real world and make some change. Thanks a lot. So I know that I have 5 minutes of questions, but we also have group questions too, which is right after my questions. So I'm happy to just make it group questions. If you guys have questions for me or the previous 2 speakers, come on down.
Let's start for you first.
Sure. I saw your hand first. Go ahead.
I have a question for you because you said that you're like a tech whiz. If you saw someone that you kind of know post on Facebook with someone who believes assassinating the president, and then his friends said, you need to take this down, and he doubled down on it, and then 2 days later repeated it.
Mm-hmm.
Other than reporting that to Facebook, should you do anything else?
Well, I would call the FBI or the Secret Service. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because they don't mess around. I mean, whether or not it's against the terms of service of Facebook or not, that is a threat against the President of the United States. I mean, Madonna got in trouble for a speech she made at the Women's March in 2017. I mean, they will visit your house and they'll ask you a lot of questions. So I would definitely call them because there's never
there's never too safe in that kind of regard. I'm sure that person wasn't really going to do it, but you never know.
So my question to you is, how do we give young people courage? So I'm Charlie's partner in crime on Maine campus. Like, our professors are so vitriolic. It makes conservatives, it's really hard for us to stand up. Like,
yep.
Amy Freed calls me a white supremacist on Twitter now. She's no longer in the closet.
Right. Oh, no, she's been out for a long time. Yeah.
She'll go on, she comments on every single Facebook post. People are fearful of their grades.
Of course.
Like, how can I motivate young people to actually stand up? Do we need people from outside helping us, or?
Yeah, that's a really tough one because there's not a really, really good answer to it. It's not like I can snap my fingers and give you the power of confidence and allow you guys to get unharassed, right? That's not really the key to it. What I would suggest to you is, and I see your question, I'll get to you next. I would suggest to you that the power of numbers and the power of a smile are your two greatest weapons, okay? I don't know about you guys, but whenever I'm trying to make my wife mad or a person mad and they are stoic, it is the thing that drives me the craziest, right? It means that I'm not having the effect I'm intending. Usually when you get into that kind of a conversation with a professor or an activist or anyone, their whole goal is to make you start exasperatingly sighing and getting all worked up and getting in a huff and puff and shouting and waving your fingers and stuff like that. So being composed and stoic and not backing down on anything. I mean, I'm not telling you to say, yes, you're right about that. But I am telling you to be very careful about how you interact with them and just be chill about it because it will drive them nuts. But more importantly, don't be alone. Don't be alone. If you are alone and you have no other choice, stand up for yourself anyway, is always my advice. But if you can bring a buddy, if you can bring some people in there, or you already know that there's some people in there, try to get them involved in that. And if they don't do it that one time, walk up to them after class and say, I would love it if you would back me up on this kind of thing. And if they can't, they can't. If they won't, they won't. So don't push the matter, but try to organize. Walk up to people, talk to them, engage them, and try to get them into the process. And I think you'll be in a good place. I saw your hand next. Go ahead.
Yeah, you said that Facebook isn't a good place to convince people, and I agree with you 100%. It's never productive. But in organizing, is it a good place to post events and rally
It is.
people together?
It is a very good place. Absolutely. I will always recommend social media stuff for organizing humans. Events, getting people out. At Maine Heritage Policy Center, we do the same thing. By the way, we've got an event on Wednesday. If you'd like to come on down. It's on our Facebook page. But that's a really, really good use of tool because it's like Meetup was. It's like, MySpace was back in the day. It's a way of networking. Networking, by the way, to you young pups, is the one piece of life advice Big Brother Matt's going to give you today. Shake hands, get that business card in people's hands, make friends, get networks, because that's how the world works. And you guys should go that heavily. And so social media is good for that. It is not good for persuasion and arguments and going back and forth. And if you're investing energy in it, I would just ask you to take stock in it, whether or not it's making you happier. Because I took stock in it, because I used to do it a lot, and it didn't make me happier. And I stopped, and I disengaged from it, and I convinced exactly as many people of my opinion, only I'm a lot happier. So I would suggest you guys back it up a little bit. Yeah.
I sought out and tried to understand why certain professors were pushing certain narratives in their classrooms. With some of them, it seemed that they believed what they were saying wholeheartedly. With others, I got something slightly more interesting. I have talked to certain professors who are afraid of their students, who feel that
that's true. Very true.
Will turn on them in an instant if they say anything that could put their worldview into question.
Yeah.
How much of that have you seen, and do you think there's any hope there with finding professors who may not be behind this wholeheartedly?
Yes, 100% to that second question. I do think there's a lot of hope in finding those professors. How much you can get out of them and what you're going to get from them. They're not going to become campus activists probably, but they're there, and you should talk to them. I can give you some names at Maine actually. But to your first question on how prevalent is that, I again go back to recommending to you the coddling of the American mind, because there's at least 2 or 3 major examples of professors that were basically, at the end of the day, fired or forced to quit as a result of the harassment from their students, from saying something that was reasonable and not at all offensive in the least bit. A great example was, Barbara, did you have an example?
The importance of being an activist also includes the fact that none of these ladies are over here getting signatures.
I'm going to talk about, I will
Very good advice.
And they got their shirts at Walmart online, because everybody's been asking to wear them.
Well, to wrap a bow on that, it's a lot of professors, it's a big problem, and I would recommend that book because it really covers a lot of that stuff. It's very, very interesting, I think, sociologically. Yes?
You said that you felt like social media was a fairly ineffective way to try and persuade people. Like
It's not that it's never happened, but yeah, generally speaking, it's pretty effective.
Well, that was. I have an Instagram and I post memes all the time that I feel even people that I know that are fairly like on the left side, but they'll watch the whole entire. My profile is pretty politically charged and I watch it. I guess I just wanted to know how do you feel that media at all has a strong influence, like CNN or music, movies, you know, because when you said that, I was thinking with the left, they use the whole entire atmosphere to persuade people, and I agree that we should fight fire with fire when it comes to trying to persuade people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. What do you feel that media is? You may feel that social media is not effective, but do you feel that media in general is a very influential tool to persuading people?
There's absolutely no question that it is. You are 100% correct about that. Media, broadly speaking, is. It depends on the medium, the speaker. There's so many factors that go into how effectual it is. But what you're touching on, and this could keep us here for 5 or 6 hours after this, is culture. Culture, whether it's music, movies, CNN, even social media to some degree, it basically is the thing that drives our perspective on millions of things in our lives. And that's the sort of insidious underbelly of why a lot of the stuff that's been happening in the country has been happening. Culture is changing, and culture is changing for very specific reasons. So I know that we probably want to broaden it out to everybody else.
I just had, first let's give him a big hand. Before we go to the general Q&A,
Sure.
I wanted to ask Representative Sampson to come up here. Sure. So thank you very much. She's just going to explain for a couple minutes what the signatures are over there.
Hi, folks. So we have 3 petitions here. And how many of you are aware of the people's veto efforts that are going on? Okay. How many of you have signed a people's veto petition? Okay, so there's plenty of you here that may not have signed some of these. So we have 3 of them. The first one is the taxpayer-funded abortion. We also have the assisted suicide. So these are bills that passed recently in the legislature that we can act as governor and veto the bill. We have 90 days from adjournment to get the signatures. We need to get we technically need 64,000, but we're trying to get 80,000 because you have to have this buffer. And then the other veto is the mandatory vaccination law. So let me just explain this because this is a very touchy issue. Essentially, we passed the law that has overturned the current law we've been operating under that has given us a 95% vaccination rate, which is one of the highest in the nation. So this came before my committee, and I asked the CDC, then why do we need this law? There was not a very good answer. The law that just passed is the most restrictive law in the nation. So they've removed all choice. And the current law that we've been operating under for decades, because many people don't even realize we've been operating under a law that mandates vaccinations. It allows some flexibility with the doctor to work with their patients. For example, you have a child that wants to be, the doctor would like, or the parents want to put them on an extended schedule. They'll be fully vaccinated. They are no longer going to be allowed to do this. This also does not just impact K through 12, all the way up through college, graduate school, public, private, online, healthcare workers, and daycare workers. So this is an issue we'd like to get on the ballot so the people, it's a huge shift from what we have been doing, and we'd like the people of Maine to have a voice. So I hope you can come and help us. After the Q&A, we're going to be there, and appreciate your attention. Yeah. You had a question?
Can you say when that signing has to be submitted? I think
September 18th is when we have to get this to the Secretary of State. And for some of you, since there's a fair people with white hair, I'm one of them. Children nowadays in K through 12 have to receive 72 shots. So it's not like it used to be. So I'm just throwing that out there because a lot of people aren't aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Let's see. I just wanted to mention that we have so we'll have Q&A for a few minutes, and then also, so during the Q&A, if you're quiet, feel free to go sign those signatures. And also, we have a lot of raffle items up here. We have no idea if we're going to actually be able to give them all away. We don't know how many raffle tickets we have, but we have a raffle donation thing there on the side. And so we're encouraging everyone to throw a buck in and get a raffle ticket if you want. But we do need to try to keep it quiet during our discussion. And then at the end of the Q&A, we'll draw the raffle tickets, and you may be a lucky winner. We don't know. So why don't we can all just kind of stand up here and ask a question for one of us, and whoever is going to answer the question will come to the podium and answer the question. But there's still quite a lot of noise in the room, so I don't know. Could we have a little bit of quiet? All right. Anybody have a question? And who for? Yes.
Yes. Lady brought up the two young women there that are wearing the flag shirt, and we saw during the Democratic debates that they didn't have a United States flag up on the stage. So the flag has become a symbol of the Republican Party more than it has the Democratic Party. But also it goes to wear flags on the lapel or clothing or hats, MAGA hats or USA hats. What's the feeling of the benefit of the pros and cons of doing that around town?
And who do you want your question to go to?
Whoever wants to answer it. Or in the schools or...
You want to answer that?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a big deal now. If you wear a MAGA hat, you really might get attacked. So...
Wear it.
Wave it!
And if you're packing a gun, I guess you could really wear it. But,
I would suggest to you, just to answer quickly, don't change what you believe and what you want to do for the oppressive mob's opinion. I mean, the Betsy Ross shoes that Nike was going to make, if they had actually tried to sell them, I would have bought 10 of them. Do what you want to do. If you feel like putting it on a shirt and wearing it around town is something that makes you feel prideful and you want to actually say something with it, put the damn shirt on.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Yeah, I don't usually wear things that advertise what I feel anyway, so I'm kind of reticent that way. I'm a very shy person, as you all can see. So, but yeah, do whatever we have to. Larry.
Yeah, just a comment on that. Probably about 8 years ago, maybe longer, I bought a Betsy Ross flag long before the current controversy came up. Just thinking it signified the start of a great country. And I've been flying that outside my door ever since, and I haven't taken it down in the past few weeks.
Well, it's not just the flag though. I mean, I own a Gadsden flag, and I used to fly that around pretty frequently. And I don't know if you guys saw what happened to Chris Pratt, but he had a T-shirt that said it had a little version of the Gadsden flag on it, and of course the saying below it and whatnot. And he got smoked on Twitter. Like a mob came after him, basically calling him, frankly, a racist for having a Gadsden flag on his shirt. So you know what? Wear the shirt. Wear the shirt. I mean, stop being intimidated.
Can I add something to that?
Of course.
Yeah, not once when I bought that flag did I if anything, I equated it with the spark that eventually did away with slavery.
And by the way, I wanted to mention about social media. I've stopped. I don't argue with anybody on social media. If they want to have a discussion, I think it's a great avenue to actually have a discussion if you can find that kind of person. I use social media to disseminate information. Here's a link to a great article. You might want to read it. I just joined Parler.com, Parler.com. It's a Twitter replacement. I've been on Twitter for a few years. I have 900 followers. I went to Parler. I've got 3,000. The interaction between the people that followed me, I've had more interaction there than I've had on Twitter. So I do believe it's useful to disseminate information to like-minded people. When somebody starts to argue with me, I just say, well, I don't have time. So if a discussion is one thing, when you get into the haters and the phobe talk, forget about it. Another question? Yes, Greg.
Peter, my question is to you. You said something about 15 million votes being flipped from one party to another, and it had to do with social media. You mentioned Amazon.
I read that statistic. You might have.
Yeah, I'm aware of the statistic he cited. Essentially, what the argument is that there was a potential to influence that many people based on social media manipulation, right? So that many people were delivered messages that were like pro-Hillary Clinton or whatnot. I would caution you, that's a big deal, and it's terrible, and you shouldn't, don't take it lightly. But also don't take the leap to think that changed 15 million votes. Because if I got that message, I'd probably have been far more likely to do the exact opposite of what that ad said. So it's a little thorny about the actual effect of it. But it is there was a study that was done about basically the kind of effect that's had on a large number of people.
Earlier, you referenced, Mr. Brown, you mentioned some names of prominent speakers, Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, whatever. I'm curious of either one or all three of your opinions on, I don't know if anybody's listening to this, is Dr. Jordan Peterson, what he had to go through in Canada between free speech versus forced speech, and whether we're still going down the wrong path with the younger generation with this. This is how I need to think because I heard it on XYZ. Everybody needs to be equal.
Yeah.
So.
I'll grab the mic really quickly, and you can definitely steal it from me. But
Please.
The reason I'm grabbing the mic is because I'm pretty much the world's biggest Jordan super fan.
Second.
Yeah. Okay. Long distance high five there. If you haven't read his book, 12 Rules for Life, go buy it. It's pretty awesome. Here's the thing: is that's actually really encouraging to me. Like, it's not encouraging me what happened to him.
Right.
But if you look at him and his presence today, he is a world. I tried to book him. I wanted to get him to speak for an event of ours. I could not even dream of affording his honorarium because he's so in demand. I mean, he's booked a year and a half in advance. He is speaking everywhere. His YouTube channel has millions and millions of people watching his stuff. And even when it's not his channel, a news outlet interviews him for something, and that gets broadcast, and then people watch that. And that's actually the bit of optimism I'd like to leave you with as sort of a parting thought. Don't undersell the intelligence and the commitment of the great silent majority of Americans out there, okay? A really heartening story for you really quick. I went and spoke to my alma mater high school. So my high school that I graduated from, Hamden Academy, 2 or 3 years ago. Actually, it was right before the 2016 election when they were doing the primaries. And I was teaching the 4 social studies classes how Republicans and Democrats do caucuses and just how different they were and stuff. To listen to those kids talk about politics was, I can't believe I'm saying this, incredibly encouraging. Because the thing about kids and young people is that they don't like being told what to think. That's where the counterculture revolution happened in the 60s. Parents said to their kids, do it this way. They said, no, I'm doing it a different way. I have 4 kids. I can tell you that's absolutely alive and well in today's generation. And that doesn't mean that you're building necessarily a conservative majority of kids because the cultural majority is liberalism, but it does mean that there's a really healthy underbelly of people that are tired of being told what to think, what to say, what to believe, who to care about, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's sort of a part of that phenomenon with Jordan Peterson specifically is that a lot of those people are just tired of the oppressive anti-speech attitude that exists in college campuses and society in general.
Well, I think my impression of him, he doesn't really mean left or right.
He doesn't.
Just think. He says, think for yourself.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add, but
No, that's good. Another question? Yes.
Jordan Peterson. Professor Jordan Peterson of the University of Toronto, I think. It's a
Formerly University of Toronto. He's
Yeah.
still there now.
Yeah, I think he is actually. I think he had tenure, and yeah, it's hard to fire him. They can shut him up, but they can't fire him, right?
Do you think we could get Tucker Carlson now?
Oh, he's been up there for a while, and I've been working on him for now 4 years. 4 years. His honorarium is something like $60,000, so I'm working on it. Yeah. Actually, I think I can get that down a little bit, but it hasn't happened yet. But look, I hope for him to come here. Yeah. He does. Yeah. In fact, we just had our Freedom and Opportunity event. Well, I think I saw several of you there. Our speaker was Matt Bevin, the governor of Kentucky, and he fishes with Tucker. They're on the same lake. So, yep.
Do we have any more questions? Go ahead.
Have you challenged the free speech, there is no free speech on campus? They really were released the day before, and they can certainly, like Chicago rule.
Yeah, yeah. What? I'm sorry. What about the policies?
The University of Chicago as, I don't know if they call it a rule, but it's like their
Chicago principles.
Yes. Yeah.
Chicago principles as far as free speech.
Right now, we're actually we're working with Fire. I have a contact with Fire, and they're currently reviewing the Maine system, the Maine public school system, University of Maine system. They're reviewing the entire student conduct code, and they're working with me starting this fall. We're going to be submitting a brief to the UMaine system, and it's going to be, this is the problem. These are probably many problems with your code, and this is how we recommend you change it. And this is a formal recommendation.
They've already done some superficial stuff.
I had an article a couple months ago called it out, which I was grateful for.
Yes, yeah.
There was actually a bill.
Yes.
There was actually a bill in the legislature this last session. I think it was LD 655. And what it did was it basically, you saw the free speech zone thing that happened at Orono. I know he did, but that is actually basically illegal to do that. So it would have basically codified that public universities are not able to restrict speech in that manner. They're not going to set up a little zone that's the size of this podium and say that's where you get to exercise your First Amendment right to free speech. They can't do that, and that's one of the several types of things you can do on college campuses to actually make things a lot more fair.
In the back, yes.
How about Star Parker? Is that anybody you're interested in having come to the school to speak? Are you familiar with her?
Who's that?
Star Parker.
I'm not familiar with her. No.
You might look her up.
Okay.
She came from the welfare plantation, and she's got a nonprofit right now that goes around and talks to the students about what the Democrats have done, and also discusses a little about the NRA.
That sounds great.
They saved a lot of black people by educating them, teaching them how to shoot guns and supplying at their own peril.
Great.
But it was really interesting.
I'll check that out, definitely.
She does come to schools.
Thank you.
Hi, could you tell us what your YouTube channel names are or your Facebook?
Mine?
All three.
Oh, well, for me, just go to peterfalkenbergbrown.com and you'll see all the links.
www.umainecr.com. So www.umainecr.com, and that will have all the social media information. You click the little Facebook button or Twitter button, Instagram button, and that'll bring you right to our pages. It's also got a donate button at the bottom if you're feeling generous.
I have a donate button too.
Mine's pretty easy. It's pretty much just my name. So you can look me up on Facebook. I'll be the one you find if you search my name, and then on Twitter it's just Matthew Gagnon on Twitter. And if every Maine Heritage Policy Center property is very easily searched. You can find it very easy.
If anyone wants that information on a card, just come up to me after.
Okay, and were you next? Yeah.
Okay, so Charlie, could you tell them about how after we were unsuspended, how they changed the rules? Like even when you win, they changed the rules?
Oh, yeah, so back when we fought our club suspension and our individual suspensions based on baloney harassment claims, what the university did was they actually went that summer, reviewed the student conduct code, and changed it so that you could not appeal decisions that were not resulting in either suspension or expulsion. So you could not appeal most decisions made by University Conduct Code under the new system that they went and implemented.
Wow.
Real quick, one question. It's about the favorite way to get under Ken's skin.
Actually, he's pretty easy to get under his skin. I mean, if you make one of his cherished arguments, the best one for me is making the argument that that the pay gap between men and women is non-existent. That will send him off into a orbit every single time.
Who's that?
My co-host on the morning on the radio, Ken Altschuler.
Just a really quick comment to Barbara's point about helping. We still could use people to help with petitions. We have 30 more days. So if you're interested in any of them, come and talk to us. And we'd be more than happy to get you jump started because we need more people out there helping. And that way you can get out there meeting the people.
Thank you. Well, it's 8:35. Do we have any more questions before our raffle drawing? Perhaps not. Representative Sue Austin is going to do the raffle drawing. So we'll end right after the raffle drawing. So if you want to stay for a few more minutes. I don't know if we'll give it. How many raffle tickets do we have? We have a few, so you might be one of the lucky ones. And after the raffle drawing, we'll close. You're all invited to come to the Gray Republican Town Committee meeting, the fourth Wednesday of every month at the Gray Town Library. So, Representative Austin, what we're gonna do with the raffle drawing is simple. If you're gonna have your attention for just a minute, the one who wins the first ticket will get to pick what they want, and the next person gets to pick what they want. So there you go. We'll go like that. Oh. Do you want to read it? Yeah, come over here and speak into the microphone. And here. Don't you have to just read the number?
If their names are on there.
Oh.
Is M-Pot here? M-Pot?
Oh, in the back.
Whatever you want.
You get to pick.
I get to choose?
Yeah. Pick one thing.
It's a gala.
The whole table?
Yeah. Yeah.
Including the books?
Yes. Just picking a book. Yeah, we did them all.
We're done?
Yep.
The raffle is done. Thank you all. God bless you. Good night.